You're in a bookstore, eyes darting across titles like Atomic Habits, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, 12 Rules for Life, Awaken the Giant Within. Each book whispers the same promise: you can be better than you are now, smarter, fitter, richer, more confident, less anxious. You pick one, then another. You feel the adrenaline of hope, like you've stumbled upon a map, finally, out of the maze of your shortcomings. Now fast forward 6 months. Your morning routine is optimized. Your journal is full. You've done dopamine detoxes, deep work sessions, and read all the right books. You know about discipline, cold showers, intermittent fasting. You meditate, you grind, you reflect. But something's off. You're still haunted. There's still this nagging feeling underneath the surface, like you're performing a version of yourself that's never quite real. You feel more competent, perhaps, more together, but strangely, not more free. You've improved your life, but have you actually transformed? And here's the paradox. The deeper you go into self-improvement, the more subtly the ego grows with you. It doesn't resist your growth, it co-opts it. It learns the language of vulnerability. It puts on the costume of authenticity. It tracks your habits, quantifies your healing, and turns your inner work into a performance for the invisible audience in your head. What if everything you're doing to fix yourself is just making the ego smarter, more armored, more slippery, more sophisticated? What if all these tools you've gathered, habits, affirmations, visualization boards, productivity apps, are not the path to freedom, but the ego's cleverest trick yet? Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But self-improvement rarely invites that terror. It sells you progress instead, and progress is safe, measurable, marketable. But transformation is death. It requires the crumbling of your false self, not just its enhancement. So what is this thing we call self? Is it something to improve or something to dismantle? And here's the deeper tension. The modern self-help world thrives on a contradiction it refuses to acknowledge. It tells you are enough, but then immediately sells you 5 steps to become more. It tells you to be authentic, while giving you scripts on how to appear confident. It tells you to stop comparing, but hooks you on hustle porn disguised as motivation. It tells you to seek inner peace, then overloads you with techniques, challenges, and life hacks. It doesn't want you to wake up, it wants you to keep chasing awakening. The more books you read about mindfulness, the less mindful you feel. The more you optimize your day, the more anxious you are about wasting time. The more you seek balance, the more you fear failure. There is a lie buried deep beneath the glowing aura of the self-improvement movement, that you are broken and must be fixed, not by understanding your pain, but by outperforming it, outsmarting it, upgrading your software so efficiently that the suffering never has a chance to speak. But what if suffering isn't a glitch? What if it's the signal? What if self-improvement is the cocoon your ego builds to avoid becoming the butterfly? This raises the question that splits the soul in two. Are you trying to become better or trying to finally be real? And what happens when you stop trying to improve yourself and instead start looking at the thing inside you that demands improvement in the first place? Who benefits when you believe you are never enough? This isn't a critique of growth. It's a reckoning with how easily growth becomes another form of ego inflation, how healing becomes another project, how authenticity becomes another mask. So ask yourself, when you read that next quote, when you try that next productivity tool, when you chase that next version of you, who are you really doing it for? And what happens if you stop? To understand the machinery beneath the self-improvement industry, you have to go deeper, beneath the branding, the dopamine hits of productivity, the illusion of mastery. You have to descend into the murky waters of the human psyche, where the desire to be better is born, not in light, but in lack. At the core of your craving for growth lies a whisper, a wound, something ancient, not spoken aloud, but felt every day. You are not enough as you are. That wound has a voice, and that voice is the ego. Contrary to popular belief, the ego isn't just arrogance or selfishness. It's not the loud part of you. It's the false self, the constructed identity you've been building since childhood, to survive, to be loved, to feel in control. It wears masks. It speaks in roles. It does whatever it must to preserve the illusion of I am this. And here's the catch. The ego isn't threatened by self-improvement. It thrives on it, because self-improvement, when unconsciously pursued, reinforces the idea that you are a project, that you are a task to complete, a problem to solve, a brand to build, a personality to optimize.
Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask you wear to fit in, to function. It is not inherently evil, it's a necessity in a civilized world. But when your entire growth becomes an enhancement of the persona rather than a confrontation with the shadow, you're no longer evolving, you're performing. And performance is the ego's favorite drug. It gets even more seductive when wrapped in philosophical language. You say you're healing, but are you healing? Or are you perfecting your coping mechanisms? You say you're building discipline, but are you becoming disciplined? Or are you gaining tighter control over your emotions so they don't threaten the image of who you think you should be? This is the paradox. Every time you set a new goal to become better, you quietly reinforce the belief that you are currently not enough. Arthur Schopenhauer once said that desire is suffering, not because wanting is wrong, but because wanting never ends. The moment you become a better version of yourself, your ego moves the finish line. It whispers, "That's good, but you can do even more. More abs, more focus, more wisdom, more followers, more inner peace." Even enlightenment becomes a goal to chase, and thus another product on the shelf. And yet, the true self is not a project. It is not interested in becoming a high-performance individual. It's not moved by 6-month plans or personal KPIs. The true self longs to be seen, not polished. It seeks integration, not optimization. It wants to face the shadow, not decorate it. This shadow, repressed anger, hidden fear, shame, and unspoken grief, doesn't improve with gratitude journaling and goal setting. It doesn't disappear through another productivity app. It waits, and it only starts to dissolve when you stop running long enough to look directly at it.
Friedrich Nietzsche warned that he who fights monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster. What if in your quest to slay mediocrity, laziness, or emotional chaos, you've become a new kind of monster? A self-policing machine that monitors, perfects, and critiques itself endlessly. Gabor Mate explains that much of our behavior, even the noble kind, stems from early coping mechanisms designed to maintain attachment at the cost of authenticity. As a child, if you sensed that love was conditional, based on achievement, behavior, appearance, then performing became survival, and so the pattern solidified. To be loved, I must become better than I am. Now grown, that voice is disguised as ambition, improvement, purpose. But deep down, it's still that small child trying to earn unconditional love through conditional success. So now, the self-help world becomes a playground for unhealed wounds in fancy clothes. Pain gets rebranded as hustle. Dissociation gets labeled grind mode. Control is marketed as discipline. Insecurity sells as growth mindset. And because society rewards performance, the mask gets applause, likes, followers, book deals. You're told you're thriving. But inside, you're just tired. Why? Because the self was never meant to be managed like a corporation. It was meant to be felt, grieved, expressed, broken, reassembled. This is the hidden mechanism that fuels the billion-dollar self-improvement machine. It monetizes your fear of being ordinary. It profits off your resistance to rest. It feeds your ego a steady diet of not yet. And you keep buying, not because you're weak, but because you've forgotten the truth. You were never broken, only convinced you were.
You think you're evolving. You think you're rising above your past, your habits, your failures, but quietly, invisibly, you're becoming a prisoner of your own progress. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the margins, between morning routines and evening reflections, between motivational videos and goal journals. It happens as your mind starts to speak in performance metrics and your emotions become data points to be optimized. You don't even realize it's happening because it looks so good on the outside. People applaud your discipline, they admire your transformation. You're becoming someone. You are the product of your own will. But beneath the achievements, the self begins to vanish. You no longer cry without analyzing the utility of your breakdown. You don't rest unless it's productive recovery. Even joy becomes strategic, engineered through flow states and dopamine regulation. You've turned your inner world into a spreadsheet, and your humanity, unruly, chaotic, flawed, has become the one thing you're afraid to feel. This is one of the most devastating consequences of the modern self-improvement obsession. You stop being a person, you become a project.
A carefully managed brand, a sculpted identity, a curated soul, and no one notices because the world celebrates it. But you notice. At 2 a.m. when the noise quiets, when you scroll through another video telling you how to reclaim your masculine energy, or manifest your dream life. When your heart quietly asks, is this really healing? Or am I just really good at pretending I'm healed? You're not alone. Because behind the viral quotes and clean aesthetics, millions are quietly suffocating under the pressure to improve. Let's take a step back and ask, how did we get here? It starts with culture. In a society built on capitalism, everything becomes a product, including you. The self becomes a commodity, a brand, a platform, a story to sell. The language of growth becomes indistinguishable from the language of marketing. Self-worth becomes tied to results. Even your inner world is expected to deliver returns. This is what the philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls the burnout society, a culture not of repression, but of overachievement, where we are no longer oppressed by external discipline, but enslaved by internalized expectations. The inner tyrant wears the mask of potential, so you don't need a boss to enslave you. You become your own. Every hour is judged, every thought evaluated, every feeling labeled productive or unproductive. And the sickest part, you praise yourself for it. This is how deep the ego trap runs. You punish yourself and call it excellence. You deny yourself and call it growth. You suffocate and call it leveling up. All while the shadow grows in silence. Jung warned of this. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But in self-improvement culture, there's no room for the unconscious. Only what can be controlled, only what can be tracked. So the shadow, your unmet grief, your rage, your guilt, your shame, it doesn't vanish. It burrows deeper. It disguises itself in toxic positivity, in fake confidence, in spiritual bypassing, and in time, you lose touch with your essence. You mistake your discipline for depth, your aesthetic for authenticity, your performance for power. You begin to fear stillness, because stillness speaks truths you've buried beneath progress. You begin to fear failure, because your entire identity depends on staying ahead of it. You begin to fear intimacy, because the real you, the messy, vulnerable, inconsistent, soft you, doesn't fit the narrative. This isn't just psychological, it's neurological. Your brain rewires according to what you repeat. And if every day you train it to view yourself as a tool to sharpen, then love becomes a task. Compassion becomes a checkbox. You are no longer being, you are performing being. And here's the deepest tragedy. You can't escape it with more improvement, because the very act of chasing escape becomes part of the trap. The pursuit of becoming eclipses the miracle of being. You climb higher and higher on a ladder that was never leaning on a wall. There is no summit, only exhaustion. So what's left? A mind addicted to self-analysis, a body trained to respond to stress with optimization, a heart slowly forgetting how to feel without asking why. This is the cost of never feeling enough. This is the invisible death that self-improvement can become. Not because growth is wrong, but because you've been convinced that who you are isn't worth loving until you become someone else. Standing before a mirror, not the one you check before going out. No, this mirror doesn't care about your posture or your style or how productive your morning was. It's ancient, cracked, sacred. And when you look into it, truly look, what stares back isn't the polished version of you. It's the one you've spent years trying to outrun. That's where freedom begins. Not with a new habit, not with a better routine, but with rebellion. The first act of rebellion is not action, it is surrender. Surrender to the truth that you are not a product, you are not a brand, you are not a persona, you are not a list of bullet point virtues. You are a soul wrapped in contradictions. You are light and shadow. You are the frightened child, the tired adult, the wild animal, the poet, the silence between your thoughts. And none of these need to be improved. You've been taught that your worth lives in the future, that someday you'll be enough when you finally get there. But what if you already are? What if wholeness isn't something to strive toward, but something to remember? Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is the rebellion, to stop seeking more light and finally turn toward your shadow, to look at your anger, not as a failure to be fixed, but as a message, to hold your grief, not as a weakness, but as proof you once dared to love, to meet your fear, not with control, but with compassion. When you stop improving long enough to feel what's actually there, the healing begins.
But here's the hard truth. Healing is not efficient. It does not come with checklists. It will not impress your followers. Real growth is not Instagrammable. It's quiet, it's messy, it's slow, and it's deeply personal. You won't get a dopamine hit from sitting with your shame, but you might hear for the first time the whisper beneath it. You were never meant to earn your worth. That is the second act of rebellion. To stop performing. Stop curating your life like content. Stop measuring your value by your output. Stop turning your pain into poetic captions for approval. Let yourself be boring. Let yourself be inconsistent. Let yourself be unseen. Let yourself be real. This will terrify the ego, because the ego feeds on identity. It wants to be something strong, wise, powerful, healed. But the soul only wants to be free. So you must decide, will you chase validation or will you claim liberation? The third act of rebellion is to redefine growth entirely. What if growth isn't about becoming more? What if it's about becoming less? Less conditioned, less performative, less reactive, more empty, more present, more whole. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how, but you were never told to question your why. Why do you want to be disciplined? Why do you want to wake at 5 a.m.? Why do you want to be successful, attractive, respected? If the answer beneath the answer is so I can feel worthy, then the game is rigged, because anything built on the lie of unworthiness will never be enough. Here's a radical idea. Let go of becoming and come back to being. Let your emotions be raw. Let your body rest. Let your thoughts unravel. Let yourself be confused. Let yourself be empty. This is not weakness. This is deprogramming. This is how the false self begins to dissolve. And yes, you will lose things. You will lose people who only loved your mask. You will lose habits that kept you numb. You will lose ambitions that were never truly yours. But you will gain something rare, a relationship with the self that doesn't depend on performance, a peace that doesn't require perfection, a freedom that isn't sold in courses or books or morning routines. You become intimate with yourself. You learn to hear the voice beneath the noise. You stop asking, what should I do next? And you start asking, what does my soul need right now? Sometimes the answer is stillness. Sometimes it's rage. Sometimes it's tears you've been holding back for years. And sometimes, only sometimes, it's laughter at how absurd this all is. Because you were never broken. You were simply living in a system that taught you to fix what wasn't yours to carry in the first place. This is the rebellion. To wake up, to stop running, to come home. And once you do, you won't need self-improvement anymore. Not because you've transcended struggle, but because you've remembered who you are beneath it. And who you are is enough. The self-improvement industry, for all its motivational quotes and clean aesthetics, built itself on a dangerous premise that you are lacking, that you are insufficient, that you must earn your way to worthiness. But look closer. Every transformation they sell begins with this unspoken message: you are not enough yet. And so you spend your days chasing that yet, hustling toward a horizon that keeps moving. The six-figure business, the chiseled body, the perfect mindset, the spiritual awakening that always seems just one more retreat away. But the truth is, there is no finish line. There is only now, this breath, this ache in your chest, this longing you can't name, this subtle sacred hum of existence. And it does not ask to be improved, it asks to be felt, all of it. The boredom, the shame, the rage, the joy that feels too good to last, the grief that doesn't ask for closure, the love that terrifies you because it demands your surrender. These are not obstacles to growth, they are growth.
This is what no program will sell you, that you, just as you are, contain everything you've been chasing. Not in the future, not in some ideal version of you. Right now, in the chaos, in the mess, in the mystery. You don't need to fix your sadness. You need to feel it. You don't need to conquer your fear. You need to listen to it. You don't need to become someone new. You need to return to the one you abandoned. And perhaps that's the deepest wound. Not that others rejected you, but that you did. In the name of progress. In the name of achievement. In the name of becoming better. You amputated parts of yourself because they didn't fit the script. You wore masks so convincingly that even you forgot what was underneath. But the masks are cracking now. You're tired, not just from working or striving, but from pretending that you're fine, pretending that growth is always pretty, pretending that you've got it all together. And here's the miracle. You don't need to pretend anymore. The ultimate truth isn't found at the top of a mountain. It's not earned through suffering or purchased through 10-step systems. It's not something you add to yourself. It's what remains when you strip everything away. When the titles fade, when the goals dissolve, when the ego finally grows quiet, what remains is presence, is aliveness, is you in your raw, untamed form. And that is not a product. That is a miracle. Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Read that again. You can chase whatever outcome you desire, but you cannot control the deeper tides within you, your compulsions, your longings, your soul's blueprint. It speaks in a language older than willpower. And sometimes the highest form of intelligence is not to push harder, but to stop, to feel, to witness. Because only in stillness can you see what's always been true, that you were never meant to improve your way to peace. You were meant to remember it. So what now? Maybe you stop asking, how can I become better? And you start asking, what part of me have I forgotten? Maybe you stop measuring your life in milestones and start experiencing it in moments. Maybe you stop worshipping productivity and start honoring presence. Maybe you stop seeking purpose in achievement and start discovering it in awareness. You don't have to reject self-growth. You just have to stop worshipping it. You don't have to abandon tools. You just have to remember who is holding them. This is the final rebellion. Not a loud one, not a flashy one, but a quiet, radiant one. The rebellion of softening, of being, of returning. So the next time someone tells you to hustle harder, to wake earlier, to optimize everything, smile gently. And remember, you are not a project. You are a presence. You are not a product. You are a mystery. And that is enough.